sports are really important vehicles for relationships.
We have purpose. We have a why. We bring people together. We connect.
I feel like God is our greatest supporter and our greatest coach.
This is Rabbi Erez Sherman, Rabbi on the Sidelines, where sports and faith intersect. This morning, we are joined from New York by Dave Sims, two-time Emmy Award-winning sports broadcaster, voice of the Seattle Mariners, excited to hear a little about baseball season, and longtime college football and basketball analyst across the country from east to west. Dave, it's so great to have you. Nice to see you.
Good to see you, Rabbi. How are you?
I'm wonderful. So much to talk about. Let's talk about Coach K just for a moment. 16 years working with him. I know you knew him back in the day with when you were in the Daily News, WFAN, as a young coach at Army. Did you ever see his trajectory going as a Hall of Famer to Duke, turning around that program, and to be honest, off the court, just making such a huge impact in the lives of young people?
If anybody said they saw this, they're lying. He was a good coach, and they had a couple of good teams. Gary Winton was this. It was almost like, as I think about it now, he was a 6'4" Mike Tyson. Thankfully, he didn't punch anybody out, but he was that burly, that strong, and he was a classic, undersized five-man who would battle anybody all day, all night. And they had some good teams, and obviously they're disciplined. Good-looking ball clubs. And then, Mike, has made the most of his opportunity. He's become a magnet. It's a pleasure. It's just a joy to work with him. And one of the many things I like, I've got plenty of experience doing talk radio, talk TV and everything. But boy, when the producer calls up and says, "Hey, Coach K wants to talk to you," and I say, yeah, what time? Okay, yeah, I can't do it now, but I can do it later. I mean, the cachet is such that we get Belichick and Saban, and we get baseball winners, the NASCAR winners, the NBA winners, whoever wins the national championship, and everybody in between. It's a lot of fun.
Well, here on Rabbi on the Sidelines, we got Dave Sims. When you sent me that email and said, let's do this, it really, really was a true honor. I want to tell you that growing up in Syracuse, New York, there were two voices that I heard on the weekend. One was my dad's, who is also a rabbi, in his sermon. But the second sermon came from you doing Big East football games of the week. That evening, you come home, turn on the TV, and it was Rabbi Sherman Sr. and Dave Sims. Tell us about the just going into those environments, and what does it mean to bring sports to the world with what's going on in your mind and bring it out through your voice?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. I mean, I think about all the times, growing up in Philly and how much enjoyment I got out of sports, being involved in it, watching it. And my father was a big sports fan. We went to every game. I mean, I grew up watching Wilt, Jim Brown, Willie Mays, Dick Allen, all those guys. And prior to that, when I would tag along with him in his Philadelphia Post Office softball league games. He was the commissioner of basketball. So I mean, I was meant to be in sports, and it's really cool. I got to tell you, it was my first. I think the stepping stone was getting a Temple University radio job, which led to, that was in 90, that led to February 91 ESPN. And then in 93, I started the Big East football game of the week. I did 93, 94, then again from like 98 to 07.
The McNabb years.
I mean, it was my part of the country, man. I-95 territory, and they had some great rivalries and a lot of fun coaches and just venues and a great crew that we worked with TV-wise. So, yeah, it's a big part of my life. And I always loved going into Syracuse in those days because I had some good teams, man. And the last really good team they have, I mean, the worst thing that ever happened to Syracuse football is McNabb graduated. So that was the last of the really tremendous and nationally ranked and contending teams back then, but I enjoyed it. Syracuse, BC, Temple, Rutgers, West Virginia, Pitt, Syracuse. Wow, I enjoyed the heck out of it.
Any moments in the Carrier Dome that you can really think of that stick out that couldn't happen anywhere else?
I remember Raph and I were doing a basketball game up there, and Bill Raftery, and I think it was playing Tennessee. I want to say Jerry Green was the coach, and we went to shoot around, and we were just coming down from the end zone, from the main entrance, and some super fan had got in there, and he was screaming about the Orange is going to do this to you, and they're going to do that to you. And he's screaming at the top of his lungs, and Jerry ran right up towards him, and it was just this verbal confrontation. Get this guy out of there! That's one of the funniest things I remember, and it's so many great games. I mean. I think the first CBS game I did was Kentucky at Syracuse. That was a good
Wow.
against
Wow.
Packer. I think, it was 94, 95.
Sounds about right. In the Mashburn years.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And just the intensity of Big East games. And Raph, when we'd go in and see Jimmy before a game, and Raph would, and they go way back. I think they play against each other. They might have crossed paths on the court by a year when Billy was playing at LaSalle and Jimmy was at Syracuse. But Raph always had to knee like, come on, Jimmy, give us something we can talk about.
And the man-to-man call, you can't beat that one every time.
Like Syracuse wins, and Boston College wins the tip, and Dave Sims, Syracuse goes matchup zone.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the non-sports world of what you see, but within the sports community. Again, we're talking about sports and faith. 30 years that you have been in this business, from the East Coast to the West Coast, from basketball to football, from TV to writing to radio. Is there any aspect of faith that you have seen in sports through the players, the coaches, the owners, the managers? And if so, has it changed at all over the last 30 years?
I've seen I remember doing a game where Tim Tebow did a game. Who the heck was he with? He was playing New England. It must have been Denver. It was one of his stops. And he's very religious. And so many guys, reach up, point to the sky and all kind of stuff. I think it's funny you mention it. It's not something I really thought a heck of a lot about. I have my own way of doing things, and I always think back to Bill Curry, who was a terrific coach, a heck of a player in the NFL. And he says, "Hey, I'm religious," but it was a line in an NFL Films feature. He says, the big guy doesn't care if you win or lose. It's how you live your life. And everybody's thank you for the touchdown. When you drop the touchdown pass, who you say anything to anybody?
Exactly.
He said the big guy doesn't care about that. And I ran into Bill going into a game in Baltimore one day, and I told him that really stayed with me. I could do a hell of a lot better than I'm doing right now, in terms of religion wise, and raised Catholic, married a Jewish girl, the kids were bar mitzvah, the oldest was married a Jewish ceremony. What I like to do more, I wish I could do more. And I had my own inner voice, and I say my own thing. But in terms of what I see outside in the sports milieu, I don't see, some of the Catholic schools you hear them saying Hail Mary or something before a game if we have access to a huddle, or if I'm just at a game, I'm not working it, but I'm just hanging out maybe with a coach friend of mine or something. I think back in the 50s and 60s, you hardly saw it. And I think the 70s and 80s, we probably have seen more demonstrations of that kind of stuff. And guys hit a home run and they're doing all this. It's like, when you're 0 for your last 17, what are you doing?
Actually, when I was in rabbinical school in New York at the Jewish Theological Seminary, Upper West Side, we had to write a metaphor for God. And me being, the artist drew a picture, the musician wrote a song, and me being a sports person, I wrote the metaphor that God is a coach. And exactly what you said. It was, who's getting the credit when things are going well, right? Oh, thank God. But who's not getting the credit when things aren't going well? And it's not God. And in fact, that's when the coach gets tossed, right? Is it the players, the coach, is it God, is it the people? It's that sacred relationship. A couple weeks ago, Seth Greenberg said, the locker room is you have your synagogue, we have our locker room, right? And finding those, if you wish, sacred moments. I think what you said, that how we live our life. And you said you have an inner voice. I want to talk about inner voice right now, based on the Seattle Times article that you wrote. I want to quote that for a moment. You said, it's 2020, in the words of the late 1960s Mississippi civil rights leader, Fannie Lou Hamer, are as poignant now as then. She said, I am sick and tired of being sick and tired. What are you sick and tired of? What should we be sick and tired of? And how do you, in your job as a sports broadcaster, bring that out to us?
Well, racial discrimination, any kind of discrimination, and whether it be racial, LGBTQ, those folks, we went through such upheaval in the summertime last summer. And the Seattle Times reached out to me and said, we respect you as one of the voices in Seattle. Would you mind saying something? I said, well, yeah, okay, we'll do it. I just think that there's just no place for that stuff in a country that talks about how great it is, and everybody gets a chance, and then you go outside and that's not the case. And I said that George Floyd thing could have been me or some of my black friends. I mean, it could have been anybody. And what that police officer did to him is reprehensible beyond words. And how do I bring it across in my broadcasting? I try. Growing up, there were broadcasters you'd hear use code words or dog whistle words about black athletes, and I go against that. I make sure I say, and especially if I'm a reporter too, but I will go out of my way sometimes to say, hey, that was a really smart play, and it happens to be about an African American guy. I never heard that growing up. Oh, it's such a great athlete. Instinctually, boy, you ever take into account that these guys put in an extraordinary amount of work, black guys and white guys, and to say that guys come out of the womb being able to go to the left and be able to shoot a 30-foot jumper, that takes work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's some talent, but that takes work too. And to hear that stuff over the years, and when I really became aware of it, probably late high school, certainly early college years, and then knowing that I wanted to get into broadcasting, and that I was very sensitive to it when I was writing, and I would watching a million games and talk, and then being at games and talking to people and hear other writers, and talking to broadcasters and hear them say that stuff really ticked me off. And I make it a point that so and so he's a really good base stealer, but you ever take into account how he studies pitchers and how he tells and how and the same thing for any sport that you can think of. These guys, black guys, white guys, but the black guys we never get credit, and that's the problem we're having now. Trying to get Eric Bieniemy and other guys to get head coaching jobs after they put in the work, put in the time to be an OC or a DC or a special teams guy or position coach. We're perfectly capable of doing everything all the white guys can do too, and it includes broadcasting.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that
I know I believe you're the only black major league broadcaster. Is that correct?
Well, with a little bit of
a little twist.
As we say in the non-former player division.
Oh, interesting.
We're the only one currently. Kenny Stilton does with the Yankees, as you know, does some play-by-play and does some color, mostly play-by-play, and he's winding down. He's trying to retire. They won't let him. They love him, and who wouldn't? Singleton. And then also in the non-player division, Mike Claiborne does Cardinals radio, the pre and the post, and does some play-by-play. And Robert Ford's the lead play-by-play. He's a Syracuse guy. He's a lead play-by-play guy in radio for the Houston Astros. And so our numbers are very small. And in the history of the game, I mean, I don't think we've had more than 10, 12 guys who have been voices of a team.
So what do you see that as the responsibility, not necessarily of you, but as a leader in that community? How do we get, number one, younger kids involved in that so that they can be the next Dave Sims? How do we find those people?
I use the Joe DiMaggio line all the time. Why do you stay upbeat? You've had 95 and 100 lost seasons and everything. And Joe DiMaggio said, somebody asked him, Joe, why do you play so hard all the time? Because somebody has seen me for the first time.
Nice.
And that stayed with me. That really has stayed with me. So every game, I almost treat it like every game is a Super Bowl. And I am an energetic broadcaster anyway, so I like to keep up. And I think if I set an example, and I'm hearing from guys who are in college now, black and white, like, hey, I didn't grow up listening to you. Oh my God.
That was me.
Can you give me some tips? Can you take a listen to my tape or watch my tape or whatever? So, but. And then the other thing too, baseball trying to reinvigorate interest in the black community, reinvigorate interest in baseball. Mm-hmm. When I was growing up in Philly, we played every form of baseball. I mean, not so much bottle caps, but tennis balls, half balls. We used to call these pimple balls. They were these raised little bounces. We Spaldings up here in New York. Played softball, played baseball, and that's, you don't see that now. And the society has changed a heck of a lot, and it's a shame because, I watch a basketball game. I say, man, that could be a really good outfielder right there. That guy could be a great second baseman. He'd be a heck of a shortstop. He could be a great catcher. That kind of thing. You watch DBs and guys that touch the ball a lot in football, and you think about how they would project in baseball.
So about education, let's talk about the hat that you're wearing on your head. Your keeper today, 42. Give us a little background of that. Obviously, we know it's Jackie Robinson, but what does that hat mean to you? And when you wear that on the air, what does it mean to us? Or what should it mean to us?
It means to me that I grew up, I think after my dad, I would say Jackie Robinson is certainly right up there on my hero chart. Even though I never saw him play, I never met him. I did meet his wife, Mrs. Robinson.
Right.
But to have read his story multiple times, have seen both movies multiple times, and knowing how tough baseball is, and knowing the stories that I heard from people, like Richie Ashburn told me, he says, we were ordered to spike, kick, spit, cuss at him at all times. And Whitey, Richie Ashburn, his nickname was Whitey. Whitey said, the more we did, the more he shoved it up our keister. Edit there by me. And I went and looked up the numbers. His numbers in Philly were terrific, Jackie Robinson's numbers. So, the man's courage, his fortitude, he was an Army officer, was court-martialed, was cleared to play in Anderson. I had just the utmost respect and admiration. And I wouldn't be Dave Sims, TV voice of the Seattle Mariners, without what he did. And that whole generation of the first wave of black players that came in, majority of them were the Dodgers at that time.
So you even went further by said Martin Luther King would not be able to do what he did of what Jackie Robinson did. Expand on that for a moment.
That was one of the main conversations that they had. I'm told from everything I've read and heard, the fact that Jackie went, he was in the Army, he was an officer, went through the court martial, and then what he did on the field spoke for itself. And the fact that here's a guy, he was the alpha of alpha males, could basically hold his tongue for a couple of years and not fight back, which is really one of the great strengths of courage and fortitude I've ever heard of. And to do that, and do it non-violently. And then he went back to himself and when it was time to be argumentative and stand up for yourself and get in the umpire's face and fight back against other players. If you're Dr. King, young kid coming out of Morehouse College down in Atlanta, you're going, whoa, this is impressive. And here's a guy that's made an impact on the world and with the courage and everything. So he was just a fantastic shining example for Dr. King, and the rest is history.
Is there somebody in baseball today, I don't want to say like a Jackie Robinson, but with what's going on today in terms of speaking out against racism, anti-Semitism, is there a person out there, obviously use your voice, but is there a player that then goes off the field and you see really being a leader?
I don't know if there's a player, but I know last summer, so the pandemic was it started like a year ago today.
Exactly.
Shut down a year ago today. And then we wound up, the Mariners had some discussions, some in-house Zoom I did with black players. At the time, we had 9 or 10 guys on the roster. And I did another one for MLB, and then I did a couple of them for MLB. And most of our guys were really outspoken, especially D. Gordon, who's now with the Reds, Taijuan Walker now with the Mets. They use their voice on social media to really talk about those issues and talk about discrimination and how what we have to do to stop it and to engage with the public. I thought they did a good job, a very good job. Kyle Lewis, Rookie of the Year for the Mariners last year, a really good job. So I think a lot of guys, and if you look at, it's the Players Alliance. It's basically a group of black players. I think it's led by Curtis Granderson and CC Sabathia and a bunch of current and retired players. And they're doing their part too in terms of community outreach and being outspoken and using their platforms on their website. They've done a great job.
Nice. So I want to go to what you do on a daily basis, Seattle Mariners. Now you're coming out west in a couple of days. Hopefully when you're down in LA, you'll be able to visit Sinai Temple and, of course, to your brother-in-law. Big shout out to Danny Corson, big friend of Sinai Temple, and a little plug for Culinary Jewish Academy.
There you go.
Cooking in an amazing way. He's gotten me in the kitchen with my children, so
Good.
I appreciate that. Hopefully he'll cook us a dinner when we get to meet in person. We're going to go back a couple of years to the not just a no-hit game, but perfect game by Felix Hernandez. We're going to take a look at this and a couple of questions for you.
Mariners, Felix Hernandez, the 2-2. He got him! 34 years, 119 games. It's finally happened. A perfect game by a Seattle Mariner. It was done by the King, Felix Hernandez. The 23rd perfect game in Major League history. Third this year, Matt Cain of the Giants. Philip Humber did it here in Seattle against the Mariners, and now Felix Hernandez. He puts his name in the record books with a perfecto.
That was a rush. That was such a rush. The entire, from about the fifth inning on, three innings. He's retired everybody in order, fourth inning. Whatever. Now he does it in the fifth inning. You're going, all right, somebody start digging out the facts. We'll be headed to something. And I think I was on my laptop, and the guys in the truck were getting stuff ready. And then it's seventh inning, then the eighth inning. I was like, oh my God, he's 3 outs away from the mortality. Oh God, I had to during the break, sort of like calm down. You got to have something, take it easy. Leave something,
Well, you were quoted by saying that dugout superstition is not my concern. Telling the story of the game is what I do. Take us through that. How do you tell the story of that game?
Hey, end of 5, Felix is perfect. What are you gonna think? I mean, that's a story. I mean, you're just somebody just getting in the car, and they don't want to hear a bunch of BS of tap dancing around. Hey, with no runs and no hit. He's throwing a freaking perfect game. Come on, jeez. Break. I mean, that whole thing. And Tim McCarver told me a story about that one time, and because what was it? In April, Humber had thrown a perfecto against us. So April must have been May, and Timmy was in town on a Friday night to do a Saturday network game. And I see him, and hey, Tim, Dave said, hey man, how are you? He says, hey, what's this I hear about you jinxing a perfect game? Now I'm like, yeah, really? He says, I'm glad you did what you did. I fully support you. He says, I'll tell you a quick story. He says, I came home one day after doing a game, turned on the TV, and I left the game on. I was putting around, unpacking my bags and everything. And then about half hour later, I hear the guy saying, well, he's got a no-hitter in the 8th inning. He said, well, if I had known that, if you got to continue to say it, I'd have sat down and devoted complete attention to it. I never forgot that.
Nice.
You're trying to get more people into the tent. You're not trying to exclude people. And here's the thing. When I was going to grade school in Philadelphia, the Holy Cross School, and you always had to worry about, you had to cover up, and you don't want anybody copying off you or anything like that. I said, that's not the situation we're in right now. I'm not trying to withhold information. I want you to know what the heck is going on.
Nice.
And honestly, I get into an argument. We were playing golf. I was at a charity golf event here in Westchester, and Ozzie Smith and we got to talk about that. Man, you can't be saying. I said, dude, you're in the dugout. I have nothing. I'm up 5 flights. If what I said carried that kind of weight, do you think the teams I broadcast for would ever lose a game?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So if I had that kind of power, we'd go 150-12 every year. I mean, come on.
They'd be worrying about the broadcaster's contract and not the manager.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, get out of here. We're reporters. We're storytellers.
So in that video that I just showed, it was really interesting. And I'm now speaking as a rabbi who gives sermons, the master pause. What I loved about that, right? You could have spoken for 2 minutes. Talk about the silence that a broadcaster can bring so that we as viewers can just take in the moment.
Well, it's television. You can see. I mean, I put my simple declarative statement or statements, maybe 2 or 3 on it. Now it's the director's turn, and to capture everything, the joy, the exhilaration, the excitement of the moment, and let it breathe. I mean, one of my other heroes, Mr. Scully, laid out for a considerable amount of time.
LA audience right here.
There you go. He laid out after the hammer, after Mr. Aaron hit the home run, was it some 15 off Al Downing. He laid out for, I don't know, 40 seconds before he came out. It happened in the Deep South, a black man, blah, 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 blah. That whole thing. It's telling now it was radio, I'd be describing everything.
Right.
Here come the guys out of the bullpen. Here come the guys out of the dugout. They're jumping all over Felix in the middle of the diamond. Hats are flying. Guys are squeezing each other for joy and so in celebration of the accomplishment of Felix Hernandez, who throws the 23rd perfect game in Major League. That's what I'd have done. I'm sure that's what my partner, my friend Rick Riz, did on the radio side. So TV, lay it out. You just underscore what we're looking at and get the heck out of the way.
Nice.
Leave some breathing room, and then you come back. Hey, and then I came back with the third perfect game of the year. Matt Cain, Umber, now Felix. Yada yada yada. And at that point, I'm following the director. At that point, he's looking at his guys. We got 15, 18 cameras, and everybody's looking for a shot. So while he's punching it up, I'll say something. Maybe I don't remember. I barely remember what happened the rest of the way. But some things I didn't need it. Didn't need any commentary. The pictures, Rod Stewart, every picture tells a story, don't it? I mean, you just leave it alone.
I think that's a great lesson, actually, to just when are those moments to just leave it alone and to allow that. One last question about Coach versus Cancer, what they're doing on the court. And, we talked about race and faith, and you said perhaps there's no faith there. But to me, in my business as faith, I see faith not just defined as how many Shabbat services or Catholic masses people go to, but just as you defined it, actually, right? How we live our life, the values that come, and I believe that sports has those moments.
It's funny you say that because I've done during with the pandemic, and I've been here during the off season. There's so many aspiring broadcasters out there, and young kids are in college and they're doing podcasts. I mean, everybody's you got availability, and they always think there's this one magic bullet piece of advice, and I'll give you the clean version of what I tell them. The golden rule is always in effect. I said, if you can just ride on that, you're gonna be fine.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things, and that was drummed into my head a long time ago, and as life goes on, man, you see it. It carries a lot of weight, man. Golden rules always in effect.
That was actually the last question. You read my mind. I always end with these amazing guests of the message to the young kids of what they want to do out there. I always say every bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah sits right here in my office and says, I want to play in the NBA. I want to hit the home run in the Grand Slam, right? What is the message to our young people who love sports, who are active in a faith community? What do they do going forward? There's
an Emerson quote about, everything worth doing, you do it with enthusiasm. That's not the exact quote, but that's the essence of it. And I use that all the time. And I think that, it's like, I remember it was with Tommy Lasorda one time, and someone asked me, how you feeling? I said, a little bit down, I'm a little caught cold here. And Tommy says, what are you kidding me? He says, you got one of the best jobs in America. You're one of the best jobs, and the best guys in the business. Don't even shut the hell up and dig down deep and just get it done. You don't feel 100%? Too bad. Go get it done. I was like, Coach, and you got to be enthusiastic about it, all your endeavors, man. And I think it has carried me a long way for a long time, man. And I am forever grateful for that, for sure.
Well, we are forever grateful for you for joining us here on Rabbi on the Sidelines. Forever grateful for being the voice of my youth and that passion on sport in Syracuse and Philly. Let's follow our Seattle Mariners into a wonderful season. Hopefully we'll see you here in LA when they play the Dodgers and hopefully the Angels. Dave, it's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Shalom.